What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to my segment, Underrated and Overlooked, where I take a look at movies that I feel are either very underrated or have been overlooked since their time of release. Recently, we unfortunately lost one of the greats, Gene Hackman, amazing actor, just one of the all-time legends. He unfortunately passed away. And I figured, why not take a look at one of his most underrated movies by far, also one of the most underrated movies by Mr. Will Smith. I'm talking about Enemy of the State from 1998. Now, this is a movie that was directed by Tony Scott, and while the movie was a pretty big success, actually, did over 250 million at the box office worldwide on an $85 million budget. So it actually was very successful, and I think it was heavily bought and rented on VHS and DVD, once it made it to home release and everything. So you might ask yourself, why am I talking about a very successful movie? Well, this is a movie that I feel like does not get the credit that it deserves. So this definitely fits more into the underrated portion of this segment versus the overlooked part, because obviously people saw it, but for some reason people don't talk about it a lot, and that is a crime in and of itself, because this movie is awesome. I have really enjoyed this movie ever since the time I saw it for the first time, and every time I watch it, I usually give it a rewatch, maybe every couple years, sometimes every other year, just depending on when I can get around to it and everything. This is one solid thriller, man. Thriller, action. It's got a little bit of everything. There's some comedy thrown in, but the greatest thing about it is it stars Will Smith, and it's not your typical Fresh Prince Will Smith. Like, this is an actual good performance by him. Not to say that when he's being, Will Smith or the Fresh Prince or whatever, those performances are good. But it's nice to see a movie where he's just a regular guy. Like, he's a lawyer, sure, so he does have a pretty high-powered job and clearly makes, good money and things like that. But at the end of the day, his character is just a regular guy, and he gets into a situation that, definitely sets things off for him and completely turns his life upside down, not unlike the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. If you're not really familiar with Enemy of the State, basically what it is you have Jon Voight plays a high-powered politician. He murders, or is part of a murder of another politician that actually gets filmed without their knowing. They try to do what they can, him and the NSA, to get their hands on this tape. The tape ends up in the hands of Will Smith's character, who is Robert Dean. He's a lawyer. It gets into his hands, and from there they try to get this from him, but he has no idea that he even has it. So from there on out, we get on a wild goose chase where they're trying to track him down, figure out what he knows, and he's just trying to escape and get back to his family and not have to worry about anything. But this movie has one of the most amazing casts I've ever seen. The cast in this movie is by far just amazing, because you have so many good actors in it. You have a lot of character actors, but then you have a lot of people who were supposed to be really big that kind of didn't really go on to be that big, but still had, pretty decent careers. So not only do you have Will Smith and the great Gene Hackman as your two leads here, but you also have like Regina King, you got Jon Voight, you've got Barry Pepper, you've got Seth Green, you got Jack Black, Jamie Kennedy, Scott Conn, Tom Sizemore, Jake Busey. Like, everybody in this movie is somebody, and the amount of people they're able to cram into this thing is nothing but amazing, because everybody here not only is in it, but they're also doing a really good job. Even the people that have little bit parts, like you got Gabriel Byrne showing up for a little bit of a scene. Lisa Bonet's in this movie, and she's doing a really good job as well. It's a whole smorgasbord of people, and it's so cool seeing that, because Tony Scott was big on that. He was somebody that could get a lot of really good people into his movies. So even in some of his lesser movies, you kind of like them because the cast is there. You have so many likable people and so many familiar faces. And this movie is just that. Like, there's so many people here, even if you're not a huge fan of the movie, there's still a lot to like about it because you have so many recognizable people that you just, some you could love, some you could hate, and some you could kind of go in between. But at the end of the day, this is one of the most impressive casts I've ever seen in a movie. I would say one of the biggest, positives of this movie is definitely the way it's paced. Like it's expertly shot by Tony Scott, and it's paced incredibly well. You're looking at a movie that's about 2 hours, 15 minutes, more or less, and it never lets up. Like even in the beginning when it's kind of introducing the characters and whatnot, and they give a little bit of, backstory to Will Smith and John Voight and a couple of his people, but it doesn't slow up. It hits every beat that it needs to. It's always constantly moving, and that is an amazing finale. I personally think you get two great performances out of Will Smith and Gene Hackman. Their chemistry together is off the charts. I read in trivia that Will Smith actually took less money to be in this movie because he wanted to act alongside Gene Hackman, and that's the kind of stuff you probably won't see from Will Smith nowadays, which is unfortunate. This movie, and the reason I think it does get a little overlooked and is definitely underrated, is because it is a Will Smith movie that you don't really ever hear about. When people talk about the best Will Smith movies, you're talking Men in Black, you're talking Independence Day, you might throw in a Pursuit of Happiness every now and again or something like that. But Enemy of the State rarely gets brought up. And it might be a bit of a controversial opinion, but I would have to say that Enemy of the State is my personal favorite Will Smith movie. And honestly, it may be his best movie. Just, from start to finish, his performance along with everything else encapsulated in the movie, like I do think it genuinely is, his best movie. That's just, my opinion. A lot of people are probably going to disagree with that, but this is a movie, if you have not seen it, you definitely need to check it out because it is well worth your time. It's well worth the watch. It's, it's got a lot of action and just a lot going on for it. And never again are you going to see a performance like this from Will Smith, unfortunately. And as well as Gene Hackman, this is a performance of his that definitely goes overlooked because it's in a movie that's similar to an older movie that he did called The Conversation. And a lot of people actually think the character he plays in that movie is the same character here, which it's not, but there are a lot of similarities, and there's even a couple scenes that kind of pay homage to that movie, which is pretty cool to see. But yeah, it's a movie that you'll never see anything like this ever again. So it is the perfect thing to check out if you haven't. If you are fans of any of the people in this movie, but especially Will Smith and Gene Hackman, you will not be disappointed with this one. That's about it for me, guys. If you have seen Enemy of the State, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more reviews, rankings, and more of this segment, Underrated and Overlooked. I will leave all my links down below on where you can follow me and check out more of my reviews. And until next time, I'll catch you all later.